the original management consultants. I mentioned earlier that I was struck in researching this book by how many of the best ideas that came up can already be found in the Constitution. This one is no exception. The 10th Amendment, ratified in 1791, was created to act as a safety net, a second layer of protection, just in case people would eventually be dumb enough to not understand that the whole intent of the Constitution was to limit federal power. It reads, "The powers not delegated to the United States by the Constitution, nor prohibited by it to the states, are reserved to the states respectively, or to the people." It's simple, straightforward, and, just as the founders feared, almost entirely ignored. The system by which the states were supposed to be laboratories of democracy, mostly free from federal interference, is called federalism, and its benefits were defended in the aptly titled Federalist Papers. In number 39, titled Conformity of the Plan to Republican Principles, for example, James Madison wrote, "Each state, in ratifying the Constitution, is considered as a sovereign body, independent of all others, and only to be bound by its own voluntary act. In this relation, then, the new Constitution will, if established, be a federal and not a national Constitution." If our founders wanted to create a purely national government, even with states still in existence, then they would have set up a majority rule system. The president would be elected based on a national popular vote, as would senators and representatives. Instead, presidential elections are handled via electoral votes based on state population. Representatives are assigned the same way, only the Senate provides a true equal balance of representation among the states at the national level. This was an entirely new concept in government, a system with some national features and some federal features. It wasn't a democracy, it was a true republic, the first ever to be tried on the planet, and it was genius. The founders had seen the freedom-robbing consequences of what centralization under a powerful king had meant. They understood that liberty expands as centralization contracts. So they went small. They took government local. They wanted the lowest-level decision-makers to be the first ones to decide. But they also recognized that some problems that start in the states are truly of national importance, which is why the federal government was not stripped of all its power. In fact, Article 6 of the Constitution declares that the Constitution itself is the supreme law of the land, a clause that gives the government tremendous power to defend the rights that are spelled out in the document. But only those rights. Everything else, as the 10th Amendment made clear, was to be left to the states or to the people. It's that distinction that seems to have confused people over the years, and Ronald Reagan addressed it head-on in a 1987 executive order on federalism. It is important to recognize the distinction between problems of national scope, which may justify federal action, and problems that are merely common to the states, which will not justify federal action because individual states, acting individually or together, can effectively deal with them. The trick, of course, is how you define each of those problems. Poverty, a problem common to all states, is to me a local issue. Leaders in West Virginia can understand and react to the plight of coal mine workers better than a bureaucrat in D.C. can. Leaders in Detroit know the intricacies of the auto business and what it's going to take to help laid-off workers. Leaders in New York City have seen firsthand the consequences of market collapses and federal regulation of Wall Street and can help those displaced workers transition their lives. It's a perfect recipe for accountability and for ensuring that decisions are made based on the realities of a specific situation instead of the generalities of an entire country. But others contend that poverty is a problem of national scope that can best be handled by the federal government through large aid programs. Of course, those people don't want to cut state aid and have the feds take over. They want all levels of government involved, something that, as we've seen, not only doesn't work, but is also massively expensive. The key thing to remember is that neither federal nor local control can ever eliminate a problem like poverty. Those who declare that as a goal may have a bleeding heart, but they also likely have a bleeding brain. So the question becomes, which system gives us the best chance at using taxpayer money most efficiently and effectively? By that standard, I believe it's no contest. Federal aid can never compete with local assistance. Why it works. Professor Lino Graglia of the University of Texas Law School once explained that keeping power decentralized and at a local level controls the tyranny and produces greater diversity and respect for individual preferences. It can be shown arithmetically, Graglia wrote, that as an issue is decided by larger units involving more people, the likelihood increases that fewer people will obtain their preference and more will be disappointed. Professor Graglia went on to explain that local control also means less overall government spending. Why? Because the costs of local government programs are felt more immediately by taxpayers and therefore result in less waste and fewer spending sprees. You can see proof of this in property taxes. They are always under intense scrutiny because people believe they can actually influence them. Property taxes aren't sent off to some no-name processing center in a faraway state. They're sent right to the town hall. Politicians who spend that money better do it wisely. The trouble with federal control is that it blurs accountability. Pennsylvanians who receive money from the federal government figure that people in Texas, California, and Florida are paying for it, thereby making it a net gain for Pennsylvania. But of course, the people in Pennsylvania are paying for programs implemented elsewhere. It's all a big sham, an illusion to make people feel like they are somehow getting free money from Washington, when in reality, all we are doing is shuffling money around the country so that politicians can create better campaign commercials. Teachable moment. When you make everyone responsible for something, no one is responsible for anything. Every good manager knows that you can't announce to the whole office, "We're all responsible for maintaining the copier," because that ensures that you'll be out of paper and dry on toner in no time. And then the finger-pointing will start. To get something done, someone needs to be personally responsible. Guess what? Government works the same way. Remember the debacle after Hurricane Katrina? I don't know about you, but dealing with a cataclysmic disaster seems to me like the exact thing we have government around for. Yet after Katrina, there were plenty of agencies that were on site, but powerless. There was more finger-pointing than there was problem-solving. The buck didn't stop anywhere, so neither did the blame. Meanwhile, people suffered.